Good afternoon and welcome to Straight from the Heart. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm really glad that you're joining me today. Even though I am not in the US, I cannot let this opportunity go by without talking about the events that happened 19 years ago in the US. And it's really interesting because when people ask, what do you remember about September 11th, 2001? What do you remember about that time? What do you remember about that date? And what is so interesting is that September 11th, 2001, I was where I am today. Now, it hasn't been 19 years consistently us being here, but when I heard about the events of 9/11, I was teaching here at the school that I am presently teaching at. In 2001, I was teaching kindergarten. I heard from my mother the following evening, and she told me that it was the kindness of strangers that got her home. She could not get on the bus. There were long lines for the buses. Everyone was covered in, ash. And I can't imagine. Everyone was, just trying to make sense of everything that had happened. And so she got a ride with someone who worked at Con Edison on a truck, said, "Miss, we'll take you as far as we can." And then she got a ride from a taxi cab driver who actually got her to her door. So it was the kindness of strangers, but no one was a stranger at that moment in time. And everyone pulled together to try to get people where they had to be. And on this day, I remember the kindness of strangers. The topic for today was, what do you do when you're done? And I was going to tag it the teacher edition. But then as I began really thinking about it, because I got 2 messages about people being overwhelmed. And what do you do? What do you do when you feel like you're done? You don't have anything left to give. Now, the last Straight from the Heart, we talked about mental health and how it's important to take time out for yourself and to just set boundaries and make expectations clear. Find something that you enjoy doing and do it. So we talked about that the last time. But for today, what do you do when you're done? And when I think about the example that specifically my mother was and is for me, I think about as I got older, because when I was younger, I wasn't cognizant of anything really. It was, when you're younger, it's about you for the most part. But when I think about the example that my mother was and is to me, and I think about when we started having conversations, me as a young adult and her as an adult who has gone through, the things that I would be facing, because we know the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun, nothing new. Everything that was, is, everything that will be, was once, there's nothing new. So when I think about the moments of frustration that my mother had to deal with losing the love of her life when my father passed away from a tragic car accident. And when I look back now over what I thought was, is she really not feeling anything? Is she really, it was almost as if she was on autopilot, right? But when I think back over the events now, I realize that my mother had a very strong support system. She came from, there were 10 of them, so she had 5 sisters and 4 brothers. And, even though the dynamic to me was a little strange, being biologically an only child, trying to figure out, okay, how do y'all get along, so well? But she had a really, really great support system. And she had systems in place so that when she was done, when she came to the end of herself, that's when she was able to tap into her support. And so my mother had an inner circle, and then she had an inner circle. And when she came to a point where she felt like she was done, she had people around her to encourage her and to undergird her, and people that she could lean on so that she could take a breath, so that she could breathe in and breathe out, so that she could cry, so that she could process. And that's important. That's very important. So even before we get to the point of being done, we should have our circle that will support us. We should stay vitally connected to God. That should be number 1, right? Vitally important. He tells us in the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, I believe, that having done all to stand. I want to find it. It is Ephesians chapter 6, right? Verse 13, therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Now, we often say, having done all to stand, stand therefore, like it's a comma instead of a period. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. So, preparation, right? Preparation before we get to the point of being done. Having systems in place before we get to the point of being done. Having good habits in place before we get to the point of being done. A lot of times we don't have a process. We don't have systems. We don't have boundaries. We're filled with unrealistic expectations of others, and others are filled with unrealistic expectations of us. And if we haven't formed good habits, the habit of having a boundary, the practice of having boundaries, the practice of, communication. No, I can't do that right now. Or, I can help you with this, but maybe not with this. If that's not already in place, then yes, we will hit walls very quickly. And we'll be done. But God has too much for us yet to do. There's still things for us to do. When the Bible says that before he knew us, before we were formed in our mother's womb, before he formed us in our mother's wombs, he knew us. When the Bible says that God knew us, everything, what we were going to go through, what we were going to be, what we were going to pursue, and there's a specific purpose for each and every one of us. And it doesn't matter our age. It doesn't matter our ethnicity. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's a specific purpose for us all. And if we get to the point where we're done and where we cave in and we quit because of the pressures of life, that thing that God had purposed for you to do from the foundation of the world won't get done. And I know I've said it before, but it bears repeating, because a lot of people are saying, I'm done. We're living in what people like to constantly say, unprecedented times. This is a perfect time for you to dust off your dreams, to dust off some goals that you had, maybe pushed to the back burner because you were too busy. Get unbusy, right? God didn't call us to busyness. God called us to specific works. There's specific things that he has called us to do, specific things that he had called us to do beforehand. So let's stop with the busyness and let's get vitally connected to God. Let's go to him in prayer and say, Father, what is it that you would have me to do? And let's get it done. Let's get it completed. Let's move in the direction of starting what it is that God would have us to do. Sometimes, we get intimidated by, our dreams, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I believe that if my dream is bigger than me, then hey, that's a good thing, because my dream's not about me. It's God's purpose coming through me to touch, to change, to transform what he desires, or who he desires to be touched, changed, and transformed. So that's not about me. The desires that God places in our hearts, it really isn't about us. Now, mind you, just like when you turn on the faucet and the water comes through the faucet, the pipes get wet, right? So, we'll get blessed in the doing because it is a desire that God placed on the inside of us. We'll be blessed in the doing of the work, of accomplishing the work. But it's not about us. It's not about our happiness. It is about us being obedient to God and doing what he has called us to do. That desire, that passion, that dream. I used to do New Year's Eve resolutions. I don't do them anymore. I have a dream book where there are things that I know God has placed on the inside of me, things that he's placed in my heart that I want to accomplish, and they're beginning to burn in me again because I've taken the busy work off of my plate, because I've taken things off of my plate that were keeping me busy. God didn't call us to busy. So what do you do when you're done? Get in the face of God. Go to him in prayer. And I told my students today, when we were talking about prayer, I said, prayer is communication. Prayer is not giving God a list of the things that you desire and want, or a list of your problems that you want him to take care of, and then walking away. That's not prayer. How many of us would like to have a conversation with somebody and they're just telling us everything that they want to tell us, and then when it's time for us to talk, they get up and they walk away? Nobody. So communicate with the maker, with your maker, with God, because it is only the manufacturer of a thing that knows the purpose of a thing. So God manufactured us. Before he even formed us in our mother's womb, he knew us. So he is our manufacturer. He knows our purpose. He knows why we were created. So spend time with him. And those desires and those dreams that you have. Now, there are some things, one thing in particular that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God is speaking to me about. And so I'm in the process and I'm shaking my head saying, this is really something. And I can't do it. not in and of myself, not on my own, not by myself. So God, since you placed it on the inside of me, and I know it's you because I hear your voice. You know me, I follow you. I know when you're speaking to me. I know this is you. So since you've placed it on the inside of me, I'm willing and I'm obedient to do what it is that you're calling me to do. You're going to have to put the other pieces in place. I'm a piece, and I'm going to do what you called me to do. I'm going to step into what you've asked me to do, what you've, positioned me to do. All that other stuff, you handle that. I'm only in control of me. So I'm going to do that. So go before God in prayer. Part of prayer also is listening, right? So get still before him. Journal, write things down. If you don't want to write things down, every phone I think has voice notes, or memos. So, record what you believe he's saying to you. Write it down. Make sure you put a date on it. Okay? Declutter your life. Take some things off of your plate, especially things that are busy. Now, I know that most of us have professions, we have jobs, and there are things that we have to do. Make your to-do list, right? And the things that you get finished, you cross those off. The things that you can't get finished, just go back on the top of the list for the next day. So everything will eventually get done, but they may not all get done today. Schedule time to dream. Schedule time to journal. Schedule time to make a little voice memo. But make sure that you take time with God, getting his plans and his purpose for you so that you can pursue it. So what do you do when you're done? Get in the face of God. Spend time with God. And remember what his word says in Ephesians 6. It says, putting all the whole armor of God so that you will be able to withstand in that evil day. And then having done all, to stand. Having done all I know to do. What do I know to do? The Bible tells me to put on the whole armor of God. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm to pray because that's part of the armor. We forget that sometimes. We stop, but that's part of the armor. It says, and praying always, right? So pray. That's part of the armor. So having done all to stand, I did my part. What does it say after that? Stand therefore, right? And then it talks about the pieces of the armor. So having done all to stand, stand therefore. How long do I have to stand? I'm done. I'm tired. Well, you're done and you're tired because you're not vitally connected. Somewhere your connection is loose. Wires are crossed. You're listening to all the chatter. Unplug a little bit. That's why we're done. We're done because we're doing a lot of things that maybe we shouldn't be doing. So what do you do when you're done? Plug in, get vitally connected to your source. Put systems in place that you can declutter your life, declutter your mind. Be mindful what you're putting in your ears. Be mindful what you're putting before your eyes. But most importantly, do spend time in the presence of God so that having done all to stand, you still stand. And for how long? You stand until you get what you're standing there for. Stand. God has already equipped us for this life. Everything that we need to live victoriously, he has already provided. He gave us a book filled with instructions, his holy word. If we would just spend time in it, getting to know what it is that he is saying to us, then we would have less cases of being done. Less cases of being done. Does life happen? Absolutely. Does life get stressful? Absolutely. Do we get inundated with things? Absolutely. But I tell people all the time, and I have to practice it more often. I tell people all the time, no is an anointed word, right? no, I cannot do that right now. And that's another lesson that I learned from my mother, right? My mother loved her grandchildren, and she had this way of making them, each and every one of them, like there's 50 of them, right? All three of them feel very, very special. And she did. She did something different with all three of them, and they felt they knew she loved them. But there were times when I would say, Mom, can you? And she would look at me and she says, let me think about that. And I caught on. I said, oh, okay, she's thinking about that means it's probably going to be no. And then she would come back to me and she would say, I thought about that. So I can't do that. But here's what I can do. And there were times when she would say to me, no, Tanya, I can't do that at all. Hopefully, you'll work it out and you'll situate it. And she was really good at it. And what was she doing? She was guarding her space, her mental health, her physical well-being. She was guarding, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Because when she could, she did. When she couldn't, she would do something else, or she wouldn't at all. And that's okay. Give yourself permission to say no. Give yourself permission to set boundaries and say, well, I can't do that, but this is what I can do. So that's what you do when you're done. Because we're not done. We're not finished. There's no ceasing from what God would have us to do until he returns for us, until Jesus returns. So as Christians, we're not done until it is finished. Thank you so much for joining me today. I would like for you to just, send me a message if these sessions are blessing you, because I know that they're a blessing to me. From the heart is designed for. It's for connection. It's for encouragement. The same way that I've been encouraged by God, I have been commissioned to go forth and encourage others. That's what all of this is about, right? It's not about anything else but encouraging you. The way God has encouraged me through the peaks and valleys of my life, I have been commissioned to do the same. And I believe that these are either seeds planted or seeds watered, but I know that he's going to give the increase. So I thank you all. God bless. Have a good weekend.